You can't predict what's going to pop out of all of this. And that's why I think it's important for DJs to expand beyond showing up with a laptop and making things more musical, more live, more risky. It's just going to be fun to watch. On this one, we actually have two filters. We have the low pass and the high pass. On the low pass, you have the frequency knob and the resonance knob that gives it that extra bubbly sound. There's also a drive control, which just kind of adds a little extra oomph, kind of like an overdrive to the low pass filter, just to give it, that much more character and personality. And then there's a high pass control for the high pass filter. It's directly from our Prophet 6 synthesizer, and it's 4 poles, highly resonant, it's 100% analog. That's the magic part. As people start getting into it and they'll realize, I could start doing this, I could do it all on the fly, and then I just tweak the filter and just add a little bit of whatever you want at any point. I think it's going to be interesting to see how people use it.
Let's go over the basic data structure of the sampler and how they affect each other. Project. A project represents the full working environment for the user. Each project stores 16 scenes, 1 arrangement, and a mixer state. The TORAIZ SP-16 allows multiple projects to be created as long as internal memory space is available. Scene. Each individual scene stores 16 patterns and assignment information for each of the 16 tracks. You can assign up to 256 samples across the scenes. Track. A track is a sample player with an amp envelope, insert effects, and a sequence editor. There are 2 types of tracks, sample tracks and through tracks. A sample track is used when using a sample as a sound source. A through track is used when using an external input as a sound source. Pattern. A pattern is a combination of the sequences created in the 16 tracks. A length of a pattern can be set on a step level from a minimum of 4 steps to a maximum of 4 bars or 64 steps. Arrangement. An arrangement is created by the arranger function, which arranges and plays patterns in order. The playback count and BPM can be set individually for each pattern. To create a new project, tap the Project button. Select Create New and press down on the rotary selector. A pop-up will appear warning you that any unsaved progress will be lost. Tap OK and another pop-up will appear asking you to name your new project. Use the on-screen keyboard to name your project. Press Shift to type in uppercase letters. Numbers are available too. When you're done, tap Create. A brand new project is created and you're ready to make some fresh beats. To open a project, tap the Project button and select Open. Press down and choose a project you wish to open from the list. In order to browse and assign samples, enter the track menu by tapping a selected track. Tap Browse. Now you can see the Samples folder on the screen. Press the rotary selector when a folder is selected. This will open or close the folder. You can move the cursor by turning the rotary selector. Press Shift while moving the cursor and the focus will move on a folder basis, and sample files will be skipped. Turn the rotary selector to select the sample you wish to load, and then press down to assign the sample to the current track. The sample is loaded to the track, and the name of the loaded sample is displayed at the top right of the screen. You can also search samples using text. Tap Filter Type and select Text. Now type in the keyword and tap Go. You can toggle Preview on and off by tapping the Preview button. Switch to track mode to speed up the process. You can assign up to 16 samples per scene, so choose your sounds wisely. You can use the different pad modes to your advantage, both in performance and production. There are 5 different pad modes you can choose from. When all the lights are off, the pads simply trigger the corresponding tracks. You can change the pad modes by hitting the buttons Track, Mute, Slice, and Scale. Track mode enables you to select tracks using the pads. This is useful when selecting tracks while editing parameters in the screen. Mute mode lets you mute tracks by hitting the pads. You can solo a track by hitting a pad while holding down Shift. Hit a solo track while holding down Shift to unsolo. The slice mode automatically slices a sample into 16 slices and spreads them across the pads. You can play different parts of the sample using the pads. This is useful when chopping up drum loops. The scale mode lets you play samples in various pitch using the pads. The pitch goes up starting from pad 1, going up a semitone per pad. The range of the notes you can play depends on the time stretch mode you are using. When set to off, you can play plus and minus 24 semitones. Resample means the pitch changes according to the tempo of the project, so it will only play one note. And when in master tempo mode, it will play up to 12 semitones. The root note is defined by the default pitch you set for the track. Use these pad modes to your advantage and always remember to be creative. The TORAIZ SP-16 has an inbuilt step sequencer. You can press a key to place a sample trigger. Press a key with a trigger assigned, and the trigger will be removed. Note that the color of the trigger corresponds with the track. You can repeat the process to create a pattern on the fly. Now that we have a beat, let's add a bass line to it. You can modulate certain parameters of an individual trigger by using the step modulation function. To step modulate, simply hold down a step key and change the parameter while doing so. The step key will blink to indicate that it is a modulated step. You can combine different parameters and make all kinds of different sounds. The length of a pattern can be changed in length mode. To enter length mode, press pattern while holding down shift. You can set the length of a pattern up to 4 bars by pressing the bar selection keys. Instead of sequencing a pattern step by step, you can directly record the performance using the dynamic recording function. Press the record button to enable dynamic recording mode. Hit the performance pads to record triggers on the fly. You can quantize your input by setting the quantize value from the BPM quantize screen. In this pop-up, you can set the project's BPM by tapping the numbers and turning the rotary selector. Any sample set to time stretch will automatically sync to the project's BPM in real time. We've collaborated with Dave Smith, a legend in the synthesizer world, to incorporate a discrete analog filter circuit as found in the Dave Smith Prophet 6. This filter can create a rich sound expression like a real musical instrument. Drive determines the level of input that goes into the filter. When set to a high value, the output sound may be distorted. When that happens, the amber over indicator light shows you that the distortion effect is in process. You can use this effect to distort the sound to add unique overtones to your sound. Turning the control counterclockwise moves the cutoff frequency towards the lower frequencies, and turning it clockwise moves the cutoff frequency towards the higher frequencies. Turning the control counterclockwise reduces the resonance of the sound in the vicinity of the cutoff frequency, and turning it clockwise increases the resonance. Turning the control counterclockwise moves the cutoff frequency towards the lower frequencies, and turning it clockwise moves the cutoff frequency towards the higher frequencies. Use the control to sculpt your sound, manipulating drive, cutoff, and resonance, and add true analog warmth and presence. Different trigger types can be used to create interesting effects. You can choose which type of trigger to sequence by entering the sequence menu. There are 3 types of triggers: full, half, and parameter. They appear with different brightnesses in the step sequencer. Now I will explain the differences and how you can use them. A full trigger triggers everything: the sample, the amp envelope, and all the parameters. Here, the baseline loop is being triggered by a full trigger as well as the kick. If I place full triggers, the baseline loop will retrigger on the beat. You can hear the attack of the sample changing, but the sample keeps retriggering. Now let's see what happens when I change them to half triggers. Only the envelope is retriggered, and you get a ducking effect. Let's listen to it with the kick. Parameter triggers only the modulated parameter. Here we have a breakbeat. You can sequence the parameter triggers first, then change the parameters on different steps. Combine the different types of triggers to make interesting effects. You can create various sounds by using sample playback. To enter the playback screen, tap a selected track, then double-tap the playback button. In the playback screen, you can set the pitch of the sample, the area of playback, and set it to either loop or trigger mode. Start endpoint. This determines the start and end point of the sample that is played. You can snap the points by turning grid snap on. When loop mode is active, the sample will continuously loop playback. This is useful when extending a sound or manipulating drum loops. There are two trigger modes, one-shot and gate. When set to one-shot, the sample will play through all the way to the end point. When set to gate, the sample will only play for as long as the pad is held down for. Pitch changes the default pitch of the sample. The sample will play back at this pitch when it is triggered by the pads or the sequence triggers. It also acts as a root note for the scale mode. I will show you a technique you can use utilizing these features. You can step modulate the start point using the touch display as well as the parameter adjustment knobs. You can use this to chop up a drum loop and rearrange it. You can use the amp envelope to change the amplitude of a sound over time and add sonic character to it. Each track has one amp envelope which is accessible from the track menu. In this screen, you can use the touch display to manipulate the attack, hold, and release. Attack softens the start of the sound, and release decides the length of the tail it leaves after hold. Hold is simply the length of the time from the start of the sound to the start of release. The same parameters can be changed using the parameter adjustment knobs. Tap Sync to change how the envelope operates in relation to the BPM. When on, the parameters are shown in steps and will change according to the project's BPM. When off, the envelope operates regardless of how fast the BPM of the project is. The trigger mode affects the amp envelope and can be changed in the screen as well. When set to one-shot, the envelope will modulate the sound from attack, hold, to release, regardless of how long the pad is being held down. When set to gate, the envelope will modulate the sound while the pad is being held down. If you let go of the pad while the envelope is in the attack or hold phase, the envelope will jump to the release phase. The shape of the attack and release can be changed in the setting pop-up. You can choose from curve or linear. You can insert an effect module per track. Access the Insert Effects screen from the track menu. Tap Select Effects to open the Insert Effects pop-up. Tap the icon to select an effect. Now the effect has been inserted. The parameters will appear on screen. When selecting effects, some have different types of that effect. For example, the multi-mode filter lets you decide what type of filter to use. Simply tap on the button labeled Filter Type and select the filter type from the list using the rotary selector. Once inserted, some effects can be customized further. The flanger has a switch that lets you decide whether or not to sync the rate to the BPM. Most of these parameters can be controlled by step modulation, so let your creativity do its job and transform the sound into something completely different. You can edit your sequence in various ways, for example, offsetting beats or making fine adjustments. To enter the sequence screen, tap the horizontal sequence button in the track menu. Here you can get an overview of the sequence you are currently editing. Offset a trigger by step modulating the offset parameter to add some groove to your sequence. You can also retrigger a sample by step modulating the retrigger count and retrigger speed. If you are feeling experimental, you can shift the sequence to generate a whole new pattern on the fly. Choose which part of the sequence you wish to shift by changing the shift area. Bar will shift the currently visible bar, and all will shift the whole sequence. You can apply quantize afterwards by tapping quantize. The triggers will then snap to the closest 16th note. You can clear all the triggers that have been sequenced by tapping the Clear Trigger button, and OK. You can adjust the balance of the tracks and send them to effects channels. Access the mixer from the home screen by tapping the mixer icon. Here you can see the overview of the mixer settings. The 6 parameter adjustment knobs each corresponds to the parameters shown on the bottom of the screen. For each track, volume, pan, and send amount. For global parameters, headphone, send back, and master levels are available. You can select a track using the rotary selector or by hitting the corresponding pads while in track mode. You can select the send effects by tapping the Effects Settings button. Adjust the parameters and send various tracks at different levels to the send effects. You can also edit the output settings in here by tapping Output Settings. Here you can route the tracks individually to any of the 8 outputs. This is useful when recording the output to a DAW for final mixing and mastering. You can also select which track cue on your headphones by tapping the Headphone Cue button. The touch strip is a very useful interface for modulating sounds on the fly. You can select the mode by pressing the mode button. There are 4 modes you can choose from: pitch, repeat, user 1, and user 2. Pitch acts as a pitch bend wheel. You can bend the pitch of the sound assigned to the pad you are currently pressing down. You can change the range of the pitch in the utility screen. You can choose from 3 types of pitch range: plus and minus 2 semitones, plus and minus 4 semitones, and plus and minus 12 semitones. Repeat simply retriggers the pad that is being pressed down. Combine this with aftertouch to create a drum roll on the fly. Custom parameters can be set for user 1 and 2 in the utility screen. You can assign up to 8 parameters to a user mode. You can choose from a variety of parameters, including parameters from insert effects. Make sure you have the effect inserted to a track in order for it to take effect. The maximum value and the minimum value can be set to the touch strip. Hold keeps the parameter locked in the last position touched by the user. You can dynamically record the touch strip operation. Here, we will sample an external sound from the line input. To record and edit samples, select the track and enter the Sample Edit screen. You can select the target for sampling by changing source. You can choose from line in and resample. Set the rec threshold, and the SP-16 will automatically start recording when it detects an input. Rec length sets how long the recorded sample will be in bars. This is dependent on the project BPM. When the specified length is reached, the recording will stop automatically. When set to off, it will record up to 32 seconds of audio regardless of the bar or BPM. An analog circuit limiter can be applied to the input sound to prevent audio clipping. This limiter only applies to the audio from line in. tap Rec to start the input recording standby.
My DJ got the skill because we run this club like track and field.
Once recording is done, you can crop the sound using the selection start and end. You can preview the recording by pressing down on the rotary selector. The Edit pop-up is where you can set the length or the BPM of the sample. When you set the track to time stretch, the sample will be stretched according to the length and the BPM set in this pop-up. Save Changes saves the edited audio as a new sample. A pop-up asking you to name the sample will appear. Tap Save to save the recording to the dedicated folder. If there are any samples already assigned to the track, Save and Replace will replace the sample currently assigned to it.
My DJ got the skill because we run
You
this
can
club
also
like track and field.
resample internal sounds generated by the TORAIZ SP-16. Set the source to resample and turn the rec threshold all the way up until play appears. When the rec threshold is set to play, the recording will begin automatically on playback. You can also edit existing samples too. Select the track and enter the sampling edit screen. You can make changes to the sample and save them as new samples. Expand your system with the MIDI out feature. You can control external hardware from your SP-16. Up to 16 MIDI sequence tracks are available. You can connect synthesizers, sound modules, and software instruments, giving you all the creative tools you need to produce a track. Let's try playing the Dave Smith Instruments Prophet 12 desktop using MIDI connection. To play external MIDI instruments, you have to change the track type to MIDI. Then, tap Select Channel button to select the MIDI channel. Select the Note button and hit the pad. You can hear the sound of pitch C being played by the Prophet 12. You can change the bass pitch with the parameter knob or by tapping the piano key on the screen. If the MIDI instruments has multiple voices, you can add notes 2, 3, and 4 to play a chord. Turn scale mode on to set a step sequence. Each of the notes are adapted to the step modulation function, which makes it easy to adjust the chords. The MIDI track has 2 remote control screens as well as Note. From these screens, you can modulate the parameters shown. With the SP-16's MIDI out function, you can connect multiple MIDI instruments. Let's try adding a bass line. Turn another track to a MIDI track and set the MIDI channel to 2. We've introduced a series of new effects with firmware version 1.2, with more to come in future updates. We've added a slope setting and glide parameter to the multi-mode filter. You can now select the filter slope of either 12 dB or 24 dB per octave. You can adjust the glide amount when you move the cutoff parameter. Delay can now be used as an insert effects. With the sync button turned on, the delay time will be synced to the master BPM. With a new lo-fi effect, you can change the sound to emulate a vintage machine. You can also insert a filter pre or post of the signal flow to adjust the harmonic distortion. The compressor lets you adjust the dynamics of the track. Adjusting the ratio parameter will make it act as a limiter. Use the distortion effect to add texture to your tracks. With distortion added, a clean guitar sound will be transformed. Adjust the dynamics parameter to sustain the distorted sound. You can now use master effects instead of send effects. Try adding the compressor to the master bus to add some punch to your beat. The LFO available on the SP-16 enables automated modulation. Each track has one LFO unit. You can adjust the LFO settings by tapping the LFO icon. In this screen, you will see the signal waveform of the LFO, destination, shape, setting, and sync button. First, let's change the destination to pitch. Change the depth to set the pitch modulation range. In this example, it creates a vibrato effect. If you change the speed, the modulation speed will change. When the sync button is activated, the rate of the LFO will be synced to the BPM. When changing phase, the waveform position will shift and the retriggered pitch will change. Now let's change the shape. You can select from triangle, saw, square, pulse 25, pulse 12, or random. Each time you select random, a unique waveform will be generated. Next, we'll change the destination to start of playback for a different sample track. When the mode is set to free, the LFO will oscillate in the background. There are 3 states in the mode setting: trigger, free, and sample and hold. When setting the destination to a specific effect parameter, you will need to add that insert effect to the current track. In this example, I've set the destination to multi-mode filter cutoff. When the mode is set to trigger or sample and hold, and trigger on is set to full and half, you can retrigger the LFO using the half trigger. Edit slice points precisely with the Set Slice feature.
This that claim to fame because we got the game on ball and chain. This that claim to fame because we got the game on ball and chain. Claim we got cause that.
For this vocal sample, the slice points aren't currently set as desired. To adjust them, tap the Set Slice button. Now you can edit the slice points using the rotary encoders. You can also add or delete slice points.
This that we got claim to fame.
You can divide a sample into 64 slices by pressing the grid slice button. The area parameter allows you to set the active area of the sample slices that will correspond with the performance pads. Add steps manually by holding the step sequencer button and tapping on the desired pad.
Claim the